Joining us now, a man who also has great hair, great swag, who honestly probably could be an anchor in the San Diego market.
No touching of the hand
in the 80s.
hair and face, and that's
yes.
it. Yeah.
Blaine Fowler, Uncle B in the Orleans Arena.
T-shirt day.
The old days in San Diego.
Yes, in San Diego.
Why is the score up behind us still? Isn't that messed up?
It's just rubbing it in. It's just not nice.
Yeah, is this a calculated move by somebody?
When I went
St.
to
Mary's Nation.
When I went to walk
show?
in this morning, I didn't have my credential on. Lady said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going up to do a BYU show." She goes, "Is BYU still in this tournament?" What? It's just rubbing it in.
BYU Sports Nation is still here, lady.
Why would you be here?
Yeah, she was confused, and I was confused.
Maybe this is Alex Jensen. Maybe this is the St. Mary's play-by-play guy. It's like, hey, can you you leave the score up from last night?
Her question was, where are you going, is a great question.
Yeah, that's like where
are you going? That's the question for BYU basketball.
Yeah, where is BYU basketball going? Let's start with this, Blaine. What's the most shocking thing that played out for you in last night's game?
The most disappointing and shocking thing was that when shots weren't falling early, and I don't know why, I guess I'm not shocked by it because I've seen this as a pattern this season. When shots aren't falling early, a team that's experienced and plays smart, they go, oh, you know what? Shots aren't falling, so we've got to attack. Let's figure out how to manufacture points somehow. Let's go to the rim. Let's get to the free throw line, and then maybe some shots start dropping inside, and then we work our way back again. But this team, for some reason, when shots don't fall, they just keep shooting them, thinking that somehow that's going to change, and eventually they're going to start falling. And they just struggled from the outside. And I watched that offense as the game progressed, and it didn't get more aggressive because shots weren't falling. It got more passive. They were standing around. There were times in the second half, and I was sitting with Steve Cleveland and with Dave McCann, and I looked over at Steve, and he looked at me, and he goes, they're standing around. Like they're not attacking right now, and this is the point where when things aren't falling, they've got to figure out a way. Guys weren't running hard with their cuts. They weren't screening for one another. It just they got very passive, and part of that is the mentality it takes to play against St. Mary's. It's hard to play against them because they grind you, and they're so meticulous with what they do offensively. They make you defend for such a long period, and they want that score to be a little bit lower, and they're so good with what they do. And they attack, and then when they get you to collapse defensively, then they kick it out, and they've got so many guys that can shoot threes. They spread the floor so well. Their spacing is so good that they frustrate you. So if you come down after that and you get 6 seconds into a shot clock and you huck up a three and you miss and they get the ball back, it's demoralizing because it feels like forever before you're going to get back again. And so, BYU, I was most disappointed that they didn't get more aggressive when they were missing outside shots. And then the other thing is that they just didn't show the maturity to be able to either change the pace of the game, to have the mental toughness to do it, or to play at that pace and be successful. So St. Mary's, again, for a third time this year, is all up in BYU's heads because BYU just cannot play this year at that pace. They let St. Mary's dictate everything on the floor last night, and that was disappointing.
So what in the world can BYU do, say, next year? BYU returns all 5 starters. There are a few guys who will be lost from the St. Mary's team, but they return a lot of the guys. What can BYU do?
Their core is back.
They lose Rayhan, who wasn't remarkable last night. He was 1 of 5 last night. And they lose Pinau, who's a good guy that comes off the bench and knocks down.
Former starter.
They get everybody else back.
Hermanson, Landale, Nar, all back. Jordan Hunter, back.
Yeah. Gonzaga, now it depends on whether Nigel goes out or not, but they only lose 2. They only have 2 seniors on that team. Things aren't different next year.
And they're Gonzaga. I'm just going to assume
Gonzaga's
they'll win the league.
Awesome again next year, and St. Mary's is going to be awesome again next year.
Who's playing for second to play Gonzaga in the title
the difference between now and next year is that those teams they're already veteran teams right now, and they stay veteran teams next year with a lot of guys that have played a lot of games. For BYU, and I know they're 32 games into the season now, so they should have been better last night than they are. But the fact is still there that they were even changing 10 games into the season of who was going to be out on the floor together. And injuries combined with these guys this is the first tournament these guys have played together in since the guys at Lone Peak were together in high school. I mean, it's been 4 or 5 years. And so this is the first tournament these guys have been together. And mentally, I didn't think they did well last night. And I didn't think the effort was great. I thought they came out and played hard at the very, very beginning. But as soon as shots didn't fall from the outside, and I didn't like that their first 2 shots were contested threes. As soon as they didn't fall, I thought that their body language wasn't good. And I think that their effort dropped off. I think they were frustrated. And that, that's easy to get frustrated against St. Mary's. So next year, St. Mary's is going to do the same stuff. So they're going to have to somehow in this offseason, as they're together, figure out a way to be mentally tougher against a team like St. Mary's, to be able to muster up the energy to do something defensively to change the pace of the game. The only way you speed St. Mary's up is to get up on them. St. Mary's rarely, I don't know if they have this year at all, other than Gonzaga, tried to play from behind where they felt like, oh, man, we better go get some buckets. They kind of play from a position of being
Pacific
ahead.
was like the only other game.
And so BYU never put St. Mary's in the 3 meetings this year behind the 8 ball where they were aggressive and forced St. Mary's to think, oh, do we need to get down there and make a basket? St. Mary's can just plod along all game long. So the way you speed St. Mary's up is you play lights-out defense. You get in their faces, you force turnovers, you get out in transition, and that speeds the game up. And then you get up on them, and then you see if they're patient enough, even with their experience, to play at their pace and say, hey, we're going to stay with our game plan. BYU gets behind on St. Mary's, and then they play in a panic because they feel like they're never going to get the ball back, and it's really, really evident because bad shots compound themselves and get worse as the game progresses. And BYU's guards, so you look at their BYU's guards shot 24% from the field last night. They were in a rush, and the bigs didn't probably get enough touches, and Mika was on the bench a lot with fouls. If you take, and I'm talking guards, wings, because BYU and St. Mary's do similar. They start 2 big guys and then 3 players that can play on the perimeter. So if you look at Hermanson, who they list as a 4, but he really is a 3-point shooter and plays on the outside. He's a guy that can rebound. And then Emmett Nar and Rayhan. Rayhan only 1 for 5. But you take those 3, they shot 45.5%. in this game. And in tournaments, guards win games.
Yes.
Your guards have to be solid because they're going to get you into what you're going to do. They set the pace. They set the tone for what you're doing. They're the ones that typically are either turning the ball or not turning the ball over. They're the ones that are pressuring defensively on the outside. So the guard play has got to get more consistent, and they've got to be better. And they have to, in a game like St. Mary's, be able to say, you know what, we're going to dictate the pace, but we're going to do it defensively because we are going to be all up in St. Mary's face and force them to be uncomfortable offensively. You guys were there last night. Did you ever see a moment in that game when St. Mary's looked the least bit uncomfortable offensively?
No. BYU was never in that game, and that's probably the biggest frustration is just like the game in Provo. I thought there would be some adjustments. The one adjustment I did see defensively was BYU went under screens. St. Mary's missed the first couple, but then they made a couple of threes.
Yeah,
and then it was
they were 13 of 25 from the three-point line.
Yeah, they shot 52% from 3. They shot just under 56% from the field, St. Mary's did. And so BYU's not going to match St. Mary's just shooting jump shots. You know, they have to play an attack. BYU should get to the free throw line more. They need to go.
St. Mary's doesn't foul. They just don't foul.
Well, and they play the gap so well, and they play such good team defense. But that means to get them where they're not in a great position to defend without fouling, you have to have better ball movement. Yeah. You have to cut harder. You want to take a lesson. Go to the game before and watch Jared. If our guards want to take a lesson, watch Jared Brownridge for a game. Watch him against Gonzaga last night. Watch him in any game. That guy, when he's on offense, when he's going to come off of a screen and he's on the right side of the floor, he will go from 0 to 65 miles an hour as hard as he can run off of 2 screens and come around to get the basketball to get open. And if he doesn't get open, he'll just circle back around and he'll do it again. He will run the other team into the ground, chasing him around. And he is relentless with what he's doing offensively. And when he gets the ball, if shots aren't falling and people are up in his face, he will attack and get to the free throw line or get to the rim or draw multiple defenders to him because he's so aggressive with what he's doing. Then he kicks it out, and then his other guys like Hauser have wide open jump shots. And that's what I was disappointed with last night, that we did not attack the way we needed to and for long enough. So if your first option isn't there, because guess what? St. Mary's is really good defensively. They get into those gaps and they take it away and their rotations are good. So you got to attack harder. Then you got to kick the ball. Then there has to be ball movement. So when they're now adjusting and rotating back, now you have an angle where you can attack, and they're not in a good position, and they foul or you get to the rim.
I had a few people asking me last night, okay, Spencer, I need a silver lining. What's my silver lining in this loss? I need something positive to think about. And honestly,
gold.
I was like, I got nothing right now. But I thought about it through the night, and I was like, okay, maybe the one thing that BYU can take away from this is sometimes teams have to hit rock bottom as like a launching point, a launching pad for bigger and better things.
22-11 is not rock bottom, or 21-11.
But in terms of a specific game, it doesn't get any lower than this for a Dave Rose team, right? Literally. This is the worst loss, most lopsided in the Dave Rose era.
Yeah.
So, in a way, Blaine, could this be a good thing in any way? Do you see any good coming from this low point?
And maybe, I don't know, maybe they'll stop, and I don't know, because Dave Rose has never, he talked a little bit about youth, but I've talked to him. Dave doesn't use that as an excuse. He's like, we're this many games into the season. These guys have to play better. We've got to get through to these guys. We've got to, and so he doesn't use it as an excuse. Don't think that he does. You guys mentioned that in the postgame, he said we're still young, and what he's referring to is they still do some things in games where you go, well, it's the first time they've been in a tournament game, this group, in college. And so there is that, but he doesn't use that as an excuse. He thinks that they should be performing at a higher level than they are, but maybe this is a humbling enough experience that the guys on the floor will go, okay, enough with we're young, enough with going, hey, I can just keep doing what I'm doing and eventually this is going to get better. What do I have to do differently as an individual player to get better? Do I have to defend harder? Do I have to work harder offensively to get free, to get open? What is it that I need to do to change the outcome of games against really good teams like this? Maybe that's what it does, and if it does that, then that's a good thing. If it causes these guys, and I like that Elijah said this needs to sting, because when something stings, then you think, okay, what do I need to do individually that can help this team to get better? I think the answer for a number of these guys is I need to play with way more effort defensively. Because that's where this team, if this team can get out and run, they're really, really good when they're getting out and running. But if you don't get out and run, if you don't get stops, so if you don't get rebounds and get the ball out, if you don't get steals and get the ball out, you don't run. So when St. Mary's is shooting almost 56% from the field and 52% from three, there's not very many run opportunities, right? And St. Mary's, they turned the ball over 7 times last night. So there weren't very many opportunities in transition. So BYU had very few opportunities to do what they do best. So how many fast break points did BYU have last night?
0.
Zilch. And that's where they're most comfortable. And so maybe they look at it and go, if we're going to be where we're most comfortable, then I'm going to have to play better defense with more effort and pay attention to the fundamentals and scout the guys that I'm playing a little bit better and pay more attention to that scouting report and do what these coaches are asking. If that happens, then this is a good thing. And now the good news is they're not done playing. So they get to get out in the NIT. We see if they learned anything from this experience. And I think that they can play with better effort. I think they can play better defensively. You want a silver lining. When I look at the individual players from a physical standpoint, skill set, they match up fine with St. Mary's. They're not as physically gifted as Gonzaga is right now, but they are physically good enough to be a top 20 team if they'll play together, play defense, and do everything that they need to do.
Yeah, during the second half, I started to think about other things, like football. 172 days until BYU at Portland State. I just did.
172, Blaine.
It's spring ball right now. Spring
football, man.
So, yeah. I hope BYU's offense in football is more efficient.
Yes, we
than
do.
BYU's, and I think they will be. Year 2 at Ty Detmer. This is exciting.
Generally, the biggest term, like growth exponential, happens from year 1 to year 2.
Defense is a way easier to implement. It is. Because once you get the guys in the right gap and you tell them what their gap is and where they're supposed to go, then it's just like, hey, and then just go get those guys. Where with offense, it's make a read while you're running your route, quarterback, make a read it during your drop. That just takes longer. And so I thought the defense was fantastic last year in a first-year defense. But offense this year, quantum leap offensively. It's going to be fun football season. We got that to look forward to.
100